To test our chain is valid method, we are going to use our test.js file. And basically in here we have imported our blockchain data structure, and we have created a new instance of our blockchain called Bitcoin. Now what we need to do is generate a blockchain for us to test. So let's do that now. Let's start up one of our servers. We don't need all 5 for this. So let's just start up one node by saying npm run node 1. Cool. So now on node 1, we can create a blockchain and add some data to it so that we can test this new blockchain. So you can see our blockchain right now only has our Genesis block in it. So let's add a couple more blocks to our chain by hitting our mine endpoint. So on port 3001, let's hit the mine endpoint. Cool. If we refresh our blockchain now, we have 2 blocks in our chain and 1 pending transaction, which is the mining reward transaction. Cool. Now let's create some transactions to add to our blockchain. So to do this, we will go to Postman, and let's just add a couple of transactions here. So I'll make 1 transaction that's worth 10 Bitcoin, and we want to send it to our node that's hosted on 3001, and we want to hit the transaction broadcast endpoint, and we'll send that. Let's make another transaction that's worth 20 Bitcoin and send that. And let's make 1 more transaction that's worth 30 Bitcoin and we'll send that. Cool. Now let's mine a new block by refreshing this page right here. And let's check our blockchain. Cool, we have our 3rd block here. It has all of our transactions in it, and we have 1 pending transaction. Cool. Now let's add a couple more transactions. We'll make one that's worth 40 Bitcoin. Another one that's worth 50 Bitcoin. Another one worth 60 Bitcoin. And 1 more worth 70 Bitcoin. Cool. Now let's mine a new block. And all of these transactions should be in our blockchain now, which they are right here. They're in our 4th block. Cool. And let's mine 2 more blocks without any data in them. So 1 more block there and 1 more block here. Cool. So now we should have 6 blocks inside of our chain. We have 5th block here and our 6th block here. Cool. So now we have a blockchain that has 6 blocks in it and somewhere around 10 transactions in it. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this entire blockchain and we're going to post it in our test.js file. So I'll start down here and just copy this whole thing all the way up. Copy that, and then right here, I'm just going to paste it. And it doesn't look too pretty. The indenting is not very good, but all of the data is there. So, and that's really all that we need. Next, we're going to save this whole object as a variable. So we will say const bc1, which will just be blockchain1, equals this entire object right here. Cool. Now what we want to do is we want to use our chain is valid method. So in test.js, we will say bitcoin.chainIsValid, and we have to pass a blockchain into this. So we will say bc1.chain, and let's console log out the results of this method. And let's add a little indicator and we will just say valid, and then this value should return to us true or false if it's working correctly. Cool. So let's save our test.js file. And now if we run this file, we should have a valid blockchain because we didn't tamper with it and we created it legitimately using all of the correct methods that we built out. So let's see if our chain is valid method works correctly. So let's head over to the terminal and we can cancel this process here. And we will say node dev/test.js and enter. Cool. So we got valid true returned to us. So it looks like our blockchain is valid. Now let's tamper with it a little bit and see if we can get a false value returned. So inside of this example blockchain, let's change one of the hashes on one of our blocks to see if it invalidates our blockchain. So for this hash, you can choose any hash, but for any random hash, I'm just going to take out the last character in the hash and save that. And now let's run this again. Cool. So it says our blockchain is not valid now, which is good because we just changed one of the hashes, so we don't have the correct hash in here. Cool, so let's change this back. And now let's mess with some of the data in one of our blocks. If we change any of the transaction data inside of one of our blocks, our chain should not be valid. So it looks like we have a transaction right here. And let's just change the recipient's address by one character. I'll just delete this F right here and save that. Now let's run this again and we should get false returned. Perfect, we got false returned. Now if I put that character back and save it, the chain should be valid again. Perfect, the chain is valid again. Nice. And finally, we want to test our Genesis block, which is this block right here. So let's change the notes and save that. And we should get false returned. Cool, we do get false returned. And also, if we put that back to 100 and we put one element inside of our transactions, we should get false returned again for us. Great, we do get false returned. So it looks like our chain is valid method is working just as it should. Now, one little exercise that I want to do, which is kind of cool and helps us to understand how our chain is valid method is working, is I'm simply going to log out the previous block hash and the current block's hash on every single block so that we can compare them with our own eyes. So let's do that now. Inside of our for loop, I will simply say console log current block hash will be our current block at the hash property. And I will say console log our previous block hash will be the previous block at the hash property. And let's actually put this previous block line before our current block because the previous block comes first. Cool, so let's save this and let's run our test again. This time when we run the test, we should see all of the hashes logged out so we can compare them for ourselves and really see what's happening inside of this method. So over here, we will say node dev/test.js and run that. Cool. Perfect. So you can see the previous block hash is logged out and the current block hash is logged out. And you can see that for every iteration, the previous block hash matches the current block hash of our previous block. So if you look at all of the hashes, you can see them logged out in pairs pretty much. We have many pairs of identical hashes, which is perfect. Cool. So our chain is valid method is working just as it should. In the next video, we will begin building out our consensus endpoint. I'll see you there.